There's been a big influx of new players playing Football Manager in recent times, mainly because the game has just been added to Epic Games for free, and a lot of you new players are joining in. But FM as a game itself can be quite hard to get your head around. It's not necessarily clear all the time what you're meant to do. You don't get your hand held, that's for sure. So today I'll be showing you everything you need to know in as short time as possible, getting started in Football Manager to turn you from a noob into a pro. I say pro, more like able to play the game at a decent level. So let's get into it. So you land in Football Manager for the first time. What are you going to do? Well, pretty obviously you are going to hit start a new game. But before I do that, I do just want to point out my game looks a little bit different. That's because I've got a downloaded skin on here that makes the game look different to how the standard FM looks. It all functions the same, it just looks a little bit different. A lot of people don't like the way that Football Manager looks originally, so if you want to, you can go out there, search Football Manager skins, and you'll find plenty of great ones that you can download. They'll have instructions of what to do to get it into your game. But pretty simply, once you download the file of the skin that you want and you put it in the right place, head to preferences, and then you can select your skin. I'm using Tato here, but there's plenty of other good ones out there, but that doesn't really mean anything to you if you're a beginner, just if anyone's interested. That's why my game looks a little bit different. But let's start off with the real basics, and that is starting a new game but setting up your save. If it's your first time to FM, I suggest you hit career. That's the thing that you'll be here to play more than likely. You then want to go ahead and choose your game mode. I suggest original, I think that's the way to play, and then go ahead and click advanced setup, and this is the screen that can be a little bit confusing for a first time player. Now if it's your first time playing, don't worry about changing any of the tick boxes down here, just leave them as whatever they're set to as the defaults, but this can be quite confusing if you are new to the game. What does it all mean? Well, let's start off with the leagues. Now these are the leagues that you're going to be able to play in. As you can see, you can add and remove leagues. If you want to play in Poland, you can do so. If you want to play in Italy, you can. Switzerland, you can add all these leagues, but the only issue is if you add something as a playable league, it's going to slow your game down, which is indicated by these stars over here. So that all depends on how good your computer is. If you want to keep it at a pretty basic level, you can literally just have the league that you want to play in loaded. And that does bring me on to a nice point that I suggest if it is your first time playing Football Manager, don't try and manage your local team. Probably don't even try and manage your favourite club. Choose one of the best teams out there, whether it's PSG, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. Just do a season and you'll learn how to play the game from that, which you can then apply to the more harder saves, because the last thing you want to do is start a save with your local club, lose 10 games, get sacked, and never want to play the game again. So let's say I want to do a save as Bayern Munich. I don't need to have the Polish division loaded. There's a small chance I'll ever manage there, but maybe Spain, Italy, England, and Germany would be good leagues for me to have loaded. And if you only want, say, the Championship upwards, you can do. If you only want the Bundesliga loaded upwards, you can do. Basically, the less leagues you have loaded, the quicker your game is going to run. Now, that doesn't mean if you don't choose a league that doesn't exist in your world. It still will. It'll just be loaded in less detail and you won't be able to manage there. Now, these two boxes here, just leave it as it is. Don't change any of them, but the database might be something that you want to alter. Very simply, the database size is how many players are in your game. For example, if you played FIFA before and you play as, say, Chelsea, Chelsea will of course have their first team squad, some substitutes, but in Football Manager, you'll have all of them, plus everyone that's in the under 21s, the under 18s, a bunch of players, and that applies for every team, not just Chelsea, but we're talking teams in the 6th tier of English football. Teams out in South Africa, Singapore, South Korea. If you want to, you can load it into more detail. Now, the full database would have 400,000 players in it, but realistically, you do not want that many. It's going to slow your game down. I would just suggest looking at small, looking at medium, looking at large. Don't go into advanced, and just seeing what your computer can handle. If you can play a game at maybe 4 speed or higher with a large database, go for that. If your computer isn't great, go for small database. You'll still have a good time with it. It's not going to affect you that much. I did just want to explain all of that start screen because I do know when I first started playing FM, that seems super complicated to me, and the amount of times I found lists on the internet of great players to sign, I could never find the players in my save. It's because the database didn't include them, and sometimes you have to extend your database or make it bigger to include certain players. So if you don't see someone in your save, that's why, but you get the idea. Once you hit next, you'll then be able to go ahead and choose the team that you want to manage, and you'll get the options of the leagues that you've loaded in. So for us, we're going to go for Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, so you can click on them. You'll then get the option to choose your manager attributes, but really don't worry about it. Just hit default here, and then go ahead and tick the 2 buttons that you see up here. That way, you'll basically have the stats that match the kind of club that you're trying to manage. And here you are, you land in Football Manager, and it's pretty daunting, but don't worry, today I'll be breaking down pretty quickly all the basics that you'll need to know to get playing. But just so you know, here on the channel, if you do want to go more in depth on a certain thing, whether it's training, scouting, transfers, whatever, we've made videos on all of those things amongst countless other stuff based on Football Manager. So if you enjoyed this kind of content or you're learning to play FM, FMSCOUT is the place to be. So hit the subscribe button and don't forget to like the video as well if you do get any use out of it. But here you are in Football Manager and you'll have a bunch of basically emails to click through. Now this is how FM works. You get given emails even with something that you need to action, usually indicated by something in red. In this case, we need to create a tactic, or you just have information that might be useful to you. Everything from squad selection rules to injury updates. Now because the tactics bit is highlighted red and says must respond, we'll talk about that first and then we'll break down some other sections of the game. But this is basically where you can create the way that your team is going to play, from formation to the style, whether it's gegenpress, tiki-taka, you can choose whatever you want. I would suggest tick the one with the thumbs up. You'll usually get 3 options with the thumbs up on, and that basically is one that suits your team according to your assistant. So let's say gegenpress here, and then you're going to go ahead and click OK, and then you'll get given 3 different formations that suit gegenpress amongst plenty others if you want to try those. You can also make your own custom tactic, but if you're starting off in FM, I suggest just choosing one of these basic ones, let's say 4-3-3. And then personally, I think if this is your first time playing, leave your tactic like this and just play like that, and eventually you'll start making tweaks yourself. For example, in possession, you might suddenly decide that you want to start playing at a slightly lesser tempo but more directness, whatever you want to do. And then if you want to, you can start changing the roles around in your team as well. So here on the right wing, we have an inside forward, someone that wants to cut in and score goals. There's a description of every single role in each position, but really I think just choose a tactical style that's got the thumbs up on it, choose a formation you like, and then just run with that and learn over time. Don't get too bogged down in this part just yet, because you'll start to figure out what works in the game pretty soon. You've then got your squad screen, which is very simple. This is all the players at your club in your first team. You can see everything from their ability, you can sort by wages, when their contracts expire, their valuation, and this is where you can go and click on a player and action them in some way. So say Jamal Musiala, you can click on him, you can then get involved in his contract, offering him a new contract. You can offer him out and try and sell him, whatever you want to do with a player. You can even talk to them, praise them for how they've been playing, warn them for how they've been playing, whatever you want to do. You can find all the player interaction stuff through the squad screen this way. Now, if I'm being totally honest with you, there's a lot of these tabs on the left hand side that you can ignore. Medical center, don't worry about that, nor the data hub when you're just getting started out. The dynamics section is pretty important. If you click on that, that will show you the atmosphere at the club. It will also let you know any issues that are going on. You can see the team's hierarchy and also the happiness of players, so you can see if anyone's upset and the reason why. Now, you don't need to get too bogged down in that just yet, but just so you know, in Football Manager, that is super important. The dynamics, happiness, how people are. In games like EAFC or FIFA, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't matter so much in career mode, but here in FM, if you have an unhappy player, it can cause issues with other players in the team, and they can stop playing to the levels that you'd expect, sometimes go even further than that and stop turning up to training. So you want to make sure you're keeping your players happy where you can. Arguably though, the most important thing I'll teach you in this video is this next bit, because this isn't really covered by the game necessarily, so let's talk about it. Head to the staff screen, and this is where you can see all the staff at your club, from your coaching team on the left here to your recruitment team where your scouts are and your medical team. But this staff screen is very, very important. The reason I say it might be the most important thing you learn today for this tab up here, the responsibilities section. If you click on this, you get a list of things that you are responsible for at your club, but what you can actually do is hand this over to someone else. So for example, media, doing press conferences. If you do not want to do this, you can go ahead and delegate this to someone else, and you can give that section of the game up. Football Manager lets you customize what kind of things you're going to do in the club. The same with training. Personally, I've played the game for years. I never get bogged down in training, and if you're new to the game, learn to play all the other aspects of the game first, and then you can start working on your training. I would always suggest go ahead and delegate your training to your assistant manager. Forget about it, he can sort it, because honestly, the training part is probably the most complicated aspect of FM, so I think you should leave that for now. The next tabs are pretty straightforward. Your schedule shows you what games you've got coming up, and the competitions tab tells you about all the competitions you're in and how you're doing in them. The club info screen gives you some information about your club, whilst the finances screen also gives you information on your finances, but to be honest, you'll never really click on these two. The dev center is your equivalent to your youth academy that you might have had in career mode if you've played FIFA or EAFC before. Basically, if you click on the dev center, you'll have either your under 21s, your under 19s, whatever your team has. In Germany, you have a second team and their under 19s. You can click on those, check out the players, see how they're developing. You can click on someone, you can have a look at him. If you like the look of him, you can promote him to your first team like so, go to development and then move to senior squad if you want to start using them yourself. But again, that's something that once you learn to play the game a bit more, you'll start taking a little bit of an interest in your development team more than normal. The club vision screen shows you everything that you're expected to do this season. It's your objectives, so where whether it's in terms of competitions, winning something, or getting to a certain stage of a competition, or sometimes it's objectives outside of that, like having the best youth system in the country. They want you to sign players based in Germany as well. These are all things that determine how well the board think you're doing, and if you're maybe losing a game or two, but you're doing some of these things that the board like, they might be more inclined to keep you. Another thing the game won't tell you, there's a button up here that says make board requests. This is where you can ask the board to improve facilities at the club, increase your transfer budget, your wage budget. But bear in mind when you do that, if you haven't been at the club for a while, the board might reject you. Imagine someone that's only been a manager at a club for 2 days asking for new training facilities. They're not going to listen, but if you're, say, Sir Alex Ferguson at Man U for a few years, then they probably will. The transfers tab will tell you about your budget, so your wage budget and your transfer budget, and it will also tell you about any transfers that are currently going on at your club. How do you make a transfer though? Well, head to the scouting section. This is where you can find some players that could be good for you. Now, you could get really bogged down into this eventually when you start playing the game, setting up really specific focuses, basically missions for your scouts. So you could send them to, say, the Netherlands looking for right backs with potential, whatever you want to do. But I suggest don't worry about this yet. Again, go to the staff section, go to responsibilities, and then down to scouting, and hand it all over to someone else. They'll do the job for you, and they'll scout players on your behalf. As time goes on in your save, your scouts will go ahead and give you players to look at, let's say Lionel Messi. You can then take a look at him and say, let's scout him more, let's try and buy him, or just forget about him, I'm not interested. And all of these players that you scout will appear in this scouted players section. Now, as time goes on, you'll get more scout reports and more players to buy. They're rated by your scouts on a rating system, like you're being graded in an American school, A, B, C, whatever. Obviously A and A+ being the best. But if you hover over the A rating or click on it, you'll get a report about what your scout thinks of the player. So he's 2 stars, but he could grow in to be a 4.5 star player. Obviously, the more stars on someone, the better. And if you want to go ahead and purchase a player, all you need to do is hover over him, go to the transfer tab, click make an offer, and then you can get involved in a transfer negotiation. Our scouts think he's valued at 14 to 20 million, so you might want to try, say, a £10 million bid. Maybe after 50 league appearances, you'll then give them another 5 million, 2 million, whatever you want to do. You can customize all of this, suggest terms, and then the opposition club will come back with some kind of counter offer, and you can work from there until you're happy, and then you can accept the demands and try and buy the player. So that's all the main tabs covered, and basically your game is just going to progress as life would as a real life manager. You hit this continue button, time will progress a little bit, and you'll get some new things pop up. In this case, it's a lot of starting stuff, so we're having a monthly meeting with our staff to figure out some goals for the club. You can go and do that if you want to. I've skipped through it, but it'd be good for you guys to go in and learn. But basically, you'll just keep hitting this continue button, and you'll get different things pop up. A lot of stuff at the start. So as you can see, I'm continuing as time goes on, and we're getting some things pop up in our inbox. For example, the code of conduct. All of these emails are different. Some's just information, like this loan report of players out on loan, and some will be things like this, where a team's going to come forward and try and buy one of our players. You can then accept or reject this offer. And eventually, as time goes on, you'll be scouting players, buying players, selling players, and moving towards a match. And then you'll be jumping into a match. You'll be having team talks with your players. You'll have this little match preview thing of all the teams, but really, you can just hit kickoff. And now you're playing Football Manager. You can click this little cog up here if you want to change the way that you view the game. Right now, we're seeing extended highlights, which might take a while, so you can choose key highlights if you want to, which will be basically only the key moments of the game, or you can go ahead to full match should you want to also, and see every single moment of a match. But your job now as the manager is to watch what's going on. You can make shouts from the touchline, you can make substitutions. Pretty simply, you are in charge of everything at the club, but are actually playing the game. You are controlling it as a manager, you're directing everything behind the scenes when it comes to scouting and transfers and training. If you've played career mode in the past on FIFA, I know I used to, Football Manager for me is like the next step up in terms of realism of being a manager. It's a brilliant game, and hopefully you'll all enjoy it. If you have any questions at all, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I'll do my best to help, or anyone watching hopefully will help you down there. But thank you for watching. If you got any use out of it, smash the like button, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.